Beyond Netero, the son of the strongest hunter, Isaac Netero. Aside from debatably gone after his adult transformation, we haven't seen any human display any power even close to that of Isaac. He was someone who dedicated his life to martial arts, dedicating himself to mastering and perfecting Nen. At one point, he was considered the world's strongest Nen user. He had great pride and confidence in his ability. While looking at the Chimera Ant nest, he says that it's been more than half a century since he was the most powerful Nen user, which means it's been more than 50 years since his prime, yet he still displayed some of the strongest Nen we've ever seen. He was someone who loved challenges and was thrilled by the prospect of a strong opponent. Netero even visited the Dark Continent twice, but said the strength he was searching for wasn't there, and I'll get more into that later. But a man who's that strong, a Nen user that wise and experienced, what kind of person is his son Beyond? That's what I'm gonna get into today. Not only will I go into his role in the manga, but I'm gonna dive into his personality and go over the type of person he is. And I want to give a quick thanks to those that requested this video. Always helps to know what people want to see. But let's get into it. We first meet Beyond when he's introduced by the King of Kakin as the leader of their expedition to the Dark Continent. Beyond gives a speech after he's introduced, and through his speech we're shown instantly the type of person he is. He begins with saying, "My beloved father always used to say, when you stop challenging yourself, your life is over." Deciphering myths and exploring ruins, we learn where our ancient ancestors came from. No matter how many obstacles stand in the path to our goal, I promise I will remove them. We're shown instantly that Beyond wants a life where he's constantly needing a challenge, which is a personality trait of his father, one that led him to becoming as strong as he was. We also learn that Beyond isn't only searching for strength on the Dark Continent. Beyond wants to explore the unknown, uncover the answers to the questions the world has always asked. And finally, we see the extent of the confidence Beyond has in himself by him saying he'll remove any obstacles in his way. When it comes to trying to figure out how strong Beyond is, it's important to know that he's been to the Dark Continent before, and in fact, the crew he went with was attacked by one of the 5 calamities, which are 5 threats all considered more dangerous than the Chimera Ants. And I'll say once again that those statements don't specify if that includes the Royal Guard of Meriam. But getting back to what I was saying, the fact that Beyond has gone to the Dark Continent and seen the dangers that lie there, not only does he want to go back for the adventure, he has great confidence in his ability to defeat whatever he comes across. Which once again, even if those threats are only as strong as the lower level Chimera Ants, that's a big statement to make, to confidently say he can handle it. And to summarize all that, we know that Beyond lives always wanting to challenge himself. We know he wants to live a life and search for strength and adventure, and he believes himself to be strong enough to handle opponents likely stronger than anything we've ever seen. Then, in my opinion, Beyond's speech takes a slight turn. He goes from talking about himself and showing us the type of person he is to trying to bring excitement to the announcement of the expedition to the Dark Continent. He plays his role in Kakin's goal to gain fame and fortune, giving them what they need and want, all in the effort to secure his journey to the Dark Continent. He says, "Age, gender, nationality, employment, race, none of that matters. Everyone deserves an equal opportunity. I will turn down no challenger. Anyone who wants to win this new world is my family. Each person will have a role to play. All you need is the courage to step forward. Come one, come all to Kakin. Let us go to the new world. I promise to take you there." I'm mainly bringing this up because when trying to figure out the type of person Beyond is, it's good to know when he's being himself and when he's putting on a show. For example, gathering people to go to the continent isn't his objective, nor is it something he cares about. He's gathering people because it's necessary, and he plays the role he needs to in order to get what he wants. In this case, travel to the Dark Continent. When he said he'd remove any obstacles in their way, he meant in his way. To him, he's pushing towards his own goal, and everything else is irrelevant. Then, something important that happens after Beyond's speech is the Zodiacs see it and discuss what to do about the situation. But later, Cheadle announces that they've been ordered by V5 to arrest Beyond. Then later, we see Beyond and his personal crew. He's told that 100,000 phone lines can't keep up with the flood of applications to go to the Dark Continent. Beyond says great, and to keep taking applications. But again, this is not because he's actually excited or cares about bringing people with him. It's all just a tool, or another step in getting towards his goal. Beyond is told that V5, an organization of the 5 largest continents, have given the King of Kakin a formal request to not go to the Dark Continent and to sign a treaty to never go. Beyond says to tell the king to ignore it. This is because Beyond has already set in motion a plan to put V5 in a situation where they can't stop him from going. Beyond then asks one of his crew, Curly, what he'd even need to do in order to follow V5's rules to go to the Dark Continent. Curly explains a lengthy process, but Beyond cuts him off, saying that if he followed their rules, he'd be waiting for years to be allowed to go, and he's already waited for so long. And even if he was eventually given permission, he'd have someone watching over him, like it's a sightseeing tour. This is when we get another look at the type of person he is. He says, I want to go where no one has gone before, meet people no one has met. I want to explore without bounds, acquire things nobody has touched, in the great wide open, leaving my mark on virgin territory. I won't turn down anyone who joins, or chase after anyone who leaves, but I'll crush anyone who tries to interfere. Not only is this writing of a very entertaining and seemingly great character, but it confirms Beyond is only concerned about his own goal, and has great confidence in his ability to achieve it. But we also see Beyond's need of adventure, wanting to live a life exploring the unknown and being the first to do so. However, I want to specify, when I say he wants to be the first to do so, it's not because he wants any recognition for it. It's purely the excitement and adventure he wants. We also see Beyond's crew, who all but 2 are giving looks of hope, confidence, and admiration. The 2 with separate expressions are Curly and Pariston. Now, Curly could just always have the same expression, which does seem to be the case, but due to the little we learn about him, I'm willing to bet he's looking at things from a much more logical point of view, and he's cautious about the upcoming events. He likely has confidence in Beyond, but I think he knows his own life will still be in danger. That following Beyond doesn't guarantee his safety, because once again, Beyond will push towards his goal, but that doesn't include protecting others who fail to push with him. Then we have Pariston, who I will be going over in a different video, but for now, he's likely trying to hide his excitement that he essentially has a new game to play. We take a break from Beyond himself and go to the Zodiacs, who are watching a video from Isaac Netero explaining the truth about his son. In the video, he says that initially, Beyond wanted to go back to the Dark Continent a second time, but Isaac forbade it until after his death, just showing how long Beyond has been waiting, not only planning, but likely training for this moment. And what we hear next gives us some more insight to Beyond and to at least a younger Isaac Netero. And I will say, this is not the official translation. It says the same thing, but in a way that gives us a little more information. Isaac says, in reference to the Dark Continent, when I was young, I stepped foot into the New World only twice. The strength that I wished for there did awaken, but it was somehow different. That strength I wanted required an opponent. In other words, it was strength that was realized in victory or defeat, but in the New World, there was only battling against harsh, cruel nature, where victory does not exist. He then later says, the strength my son desired was formidable and essential for exploring there. If anything, he's probably more suited to being a hunter than I am. So let's break this all down. For starters, the biggest reason Isaac decided not to return to the Dark Continent, and the reason he didn't want others going, it wasn't just a land where a strong opponent could be found. It was a land that put you in a constant battle for survival. It took more than just a strong individual to survive, and it's that more that Isaac didn't want. That's what made that world so different. Isaac was searching for strength purely as an individual, where through combat he became stronger through either victory or defeat, maybe even getting the satisfaction of losing to such a strong opponent. So Isaac's goal in life didn't require or need or give him the want to endure all that came with being on the Dark Continent. However, Beyond has a different goal and a different view of the Dark Continent. Like I've said, Beyond views it as a place that should or needs to be explored. Although it may be part, searching for strength is not his main intention, as it was with his father. It's the exploration and adventure Beyond wants, because likely, Beyond doesn't feel like he needs to become stronger. To me, it's shown that he feels he already has the strength he needs, and now wants to use it to explore. This is all mostly shown when Isaac says, "The strength my son desired was formidable and essential for exploring there." And speaking of that line, when he says, "If anything, he's probably more suited to being a hunter than I am," although you could interpret it as Isaac saying Beyond is stronger than him, he's much more likely highlighting the difference between him and his son that I just went over. And although I'm sure he's also acknowledging his son's strength, when Isaac says Beyond is more suited as a hunter, I think he's saying Beyond's need for adventure and his ability to jump headfirst into danger and without fear. They're all parts of what it takes to be a great or true hunter. Isaac didn't have it in him to do that, thus why he thinks Beyond is the better hunter. Mind you, this is in the context of the Dark Continent. I'm not trying to make it seem like I think Isaac was just some scared old weak man. But moving on, we go back to the Zodiacs, and Beans gets a call from Beyond, and we then see that Beyond has decided to turn himself into the Hunter Association. He then tells them to contact V5 and tell them they've captured him. Now, while saying this, he seems to be calm and collected, acting very much like his father. However, his whole mood is clearly shown to change as he says, "Just call it a quid pro quo." And then either Beyond's aura is shown or it's something else. If it's his aura, then he's likely using something like Ten or Ren to intimidate the Zodiacs upon their first meeting, and it's almost like he's boasting about his power. But if it's not his aura, then I think it's supposed to show the strength of his presence without even needing to show off any nen. It's also likely supposed to show something along the lines of mischief, because he's already thought this whole thing through. Either way, he's presenting himself with a strong presence and already has a plan for what he's doing. He also seems to like establishing himself as the strongest man in the room, or he just always thinks he is. Then later, we see him locked in a room, shackled to the wall, being talked to by Cheadle and the Zodiacs. And we specifically see him shaking his arm like he was testing the shackle's strength. And with his facial expression, I think he's almost laughing at how useless it is. Like he's thinking, they really think this could hold me? Like I couldn't walk out of here if I wanted? So to me, it's just a quick show that he's almost cocky of his strength. Beyond then says they can do what they want with him, but he predicts that he will be released and they will go to the Dark Continent with him. Now here, I do think Beyond is definitely releasing either Ten or Ren, likely Ren with how it compares to others. But I don't think he's solely doing this for intimidation. I think it's the excitement he has for knowing he's already won this interaction, or that because he knows he's stronger and smarter. And he's almost showing off his confidence, all in trying to make the Zodiacs realize that they're playing a fixed game that he's already won. Cheadle says his prediction is impossible, that he'll be imprisoned, and that he's delusional. But Beyond responds with saying what she said was just the idealistic answer. He explains that the real world isn't like that, and she has time to hear him out before reporting to V5. This gives us a little insight to more than just Beyond's view on life, but his view on the world. He doesn't believe he or anyone needs to follow the rules. That if you have the position, power, or opportunity to do something, there's nothing stopping you from doing so. Also, when Beyond says this, he knows Cheadle's curiosity will leave her with no choice but to hear him out. Likely, she'll believe that the Zodiacs can go about making the most logical decision on how to proceed if they know more about Beyond. But once again, Beyond likely already knew that's what she'd think, as she agrees to hear him out. Cheadle asks if he's okay with the conversation being recorded, and he says he has no problem because he knows she couldn't make any of it public. Cheadle thinks to herself that he looks just like his father. Just facing him makes her shake, and she wonders what he wants. But she also goes on to think, the only thing I know right now is that we're being attacked. This brings us some more stuff to look into. There's two ways you could look at this. Either Beyond's presence is so strong and powerful, she's nervous, and she can feel his aggression making her feel attacked. Or the second option, which I find more likely, is Beyond looks so much like his father that it's almost surreal. She's shaking because she's getting nervous in a similar way she would with Isaac because she knew his strength. However, with Beyond, she knows almost nothing. When she says they're under attack, this isn't literal. She sees his attack as the plan he has to make sure he gets to the Dark Continent. His attack is the challenge he's given to her. Then after this, The V5 officials have a meeting and come to the conclusion that the best way to handle everything is to do exactly what Beyond said would happen. They unofficially support Kakin's trip to the Dark Continent under the condition that Beyond is supervised by the Hunter Association, and that all treasure found there is spread equally among the continents, finally proving for certain that Beyond had already known all this would happen. We go back to Beyond, and he says that he created the open door policy to allow civilians to choose to go to the continent because he wanted the public pressure on V5, making it hard for them to stop the expedition with all of the public support. And this ended up working, showing that Beyond isn't only smart enough to create plans, but smart enough to have them work. Then one of the Zodiacs, Sacho, explains more of how they fell into Beyond's trap. He says that Beyond had a ticket to the Dark Continent in exchange for making Kakin's king into a historic hero, and the V5 couldn't stop them, and they don't like to lose, so they're gonna go with them, and the hunters will supervise Beyond and the trip. Then we get something interesting. One of the Zodiacs says that if they succeed, it's possible they'll be allowed to hunt on the Dark Continent. This is cool to me because if this happened when Isaac was alive, it would be his nightmare. Isaac didn't want people going to the Dark Continent due to how deadly it was, and I'd certainly doubt he dreamed of a hunter association where hunters freely explored the Dark Continent. But once again, remember Isaac said Beyond was more suited to be a hunter. So in all of this, Beyond is potentially creating a hunter association that is more in line with what hunters are supposed to be. You could maybe even argue Beyond is becoming the man and creating the world that he believed his father should have. Or maybe Isaac has nothing to do with it and it's just purely Beyond's own vision of how the world should be. Beyond then challenges Cheadle and says it will take place on the Dark Continent. Although he doesn't say what the challenge is specifically, we later learn that the challenge is likely him trying to escape his supervision and explore on his own. And this was his objective with his conversation with Cheadle. Simply going to the Dark Continent wasn't enough. He wanted to add another challenge for himself. Cheadle then thinks, yes, this is a battle, and the entire association will have to fight. Which to me is her acknowledging not only his intelligence, but also his strength. Cheadle then says she accepts his challenge, but first there's many things they'll have to confirm. Beyond immediately says they can take his blood, which makes Cheadle think he expected to be challenged as a fraud. I know he's the chairman's son. He's using the Hunter Association as a stepping stone to get to the Dark Continent, showing once more how much Beyond has thought this through, but also that Cheadle definitely knows that Beyond is 10 steps ahead. Cheadle then tells him to be prepared for a long arrest, to which he says, a long time? I'll wait, as long as it takes. He just made his next major step towards his goal, and he's sitting feeling the excitement of the moment, yet he's still showing his patience, even with how close he is to his goal. Some stuff happens unrelated to Beyond, but we get back to Cheadle, and she's on the phone with a V6 executive. He tells her to write a contract for Beyond to sign. He says that if he violates any part of her contract, to tell him that he'll spend the rest of his life in jail. He also tells her that if Beyond were to escape and take credit for any discovery on the Dark Continent, her career, or maybe even her life, is over. Cheadle then goes back to Beyond, and she hands him the contract she wrote. Beyond looks it over and says, exactly like I said, right? Because at this point, he knows that his prediction came true, and likely everything's going according to plan. However, Cheadle says he's not totally right, and that he won't be released, and in fact, he'll have to stay in a room under 24-hour watch, and he'll be chaperoned on any and all outings. His location will constantly be monitored by an anklet, and finally, any and all communication will also be monitored. However, I doubt these are things Beyond didn't see coming. I think it's very likely he knew he'd be under constant watch. And like I've gone over, I think it's highly likely most of this are just more fun challenges for Beyond to overcome. Beyond keeps reading parts of the contract. He goes over how he's not allowed to resist the Hunter Association, doing things such as trying to escape, and that any treasure he finds must be given to V6 to then be distributed among them. Beyond says it all sounds reasonable and agrees to sign it. Then Beyond says now that he has permission, there's only 3 things left until he can get to the Dark Continent: qualifications, the means, and a contract. Now, from the people I've talked to and what I've been able to find, this was a little confusing to people, including myself, but essentially, in order to get to the Dark Continent, Beyond needs permission from the world governments, or in this case V5, which is now V6. Now that he has that, all he needs is qualifications, which is likely the process to find people strong enough or qualified enough to go, then he needs the means, which is the process of actually getting to the real dark continent, because remember, the black whale is only taking people to the fake continent. And then the contract is the most confusing part to me, because he's already signed one. But to my understanding, it likely means the contract that needs to be made with the guide that's responsible for taking humanity to the real dark continent. Finally, one last thing I want to go over in this scene is how Beyond is either balancing a pen on the paper or he's pushed it into the paper and the table. Either way, I find it interesting how we see this display because it makes me think about how one of the first times we see his father, Isaac was balancing a drink on his foot. Now, I don't think this was definitely a connection that Togashi was trying to make, but I do think it's a cool comparison of how the two of them are portrayed. Then some time passes, and we see Beyond eating and Nana is talking to him. He tells him that the date of the departure has been decided, and it's in 35 days. He also says the King of Kakin wants Beyond to attend the Eve Festival and the departure ceremony, and he'll let Beyond go if he tells him who's on his side within the Zodiacs. This is because Nana suspects someone within the Zodiacs will try to break Beyond free, and we'll learn a little bit more about that later. Beyond says he doesn't know about any spies. He also says that he doesn't care about any ceremonies, and although he does attend them, it's not because he cares about any fame or glory. He purely sees it as playing his role in getting himself to the Dark Continent. Beyond then says that he plans to just behave and sit tight until he finally arrives on the continent, and for the king's sake, he'll participate in the ceremonies. But all he's interested in is what lies beyond. We then get a conversation between Kurapika and Nana, and Kurapika confirms Beyond was telling the truth about everything he said. Also, earlier, Kurapika and Nana confirmed that Sayu was on Beyond's side, which leads Nana to saying that Sayu must be allied with Pariston, and they will try to break Beyond free so they can explore on their own. This also likely means that Beyond truly doesn't know about the plan for him to be broken free, either because he didn't want to risk having any information about it, or he simply plans to break free on his own. And then Pariston has a plan to break him free, because either he wants to have a backup plan just in case, or he's not fully confident Beyond could escape on his own. However, I will mention something important. Although Kurapika and Nana suspect Pariston will try to break Beyond free, Pariston has stated they don't have a plan besides waiting for Beyond to escape on his own and then meet up with them. And although that does sound possible, I just don't like trusting anything Pariston says. But either way, the most likely outcome is Beyond breaking out on his own. Also, this brings up another thing. It has to do with what I said earlier about Beyond possibly creating a hunter association that's more in line with what hunters are supposed to be. There are other hunters that believe the hunter association has either become weak, boring, or just lost sight of what it's supposed to be. Those are people like Pariston and Sayu. I bring this up because it's important to see the image Beyond has as a hunter. Others believe he's the one they need to follow in order to bring the hunters back to what they're supposed to be. Then, for fun, I want to mention when Kurapika and Nana think Pariston will try to break Beyond free. Long story short, the plan to get to the Dark Continent is they'll leave from Kakin and sail to a fake Dark Continent. From there, they'll drop off civilians, and then the strongest will be able to go to the real Dark Continent. So Kurapika and Nana think right when they get to the fake continent, Pariston and Sayu will break him free. And although they plan to arrest Sayu before that happens, we'll still just have to wait and see. 35 days pass, and Beyond attends the departure ceremony, parading with the Kakin royal family. Then Beyond is taken to a cell where he's just patiently waiting, reading a book, and there's 3 Zodiacs guarding him, with one of them being Sayu. Now that's all Beyond has done in the manga, and that's all we learn about him. But let's go back over everything we've learned about Beyond. He lives with the idea that once you stop challenging yourself, your life is over. So through that, he's constantly looking for new challenges, and the challenge he set his eyes on is the Dark Continent. There, he wants to explore things no one has ever seen, and he's willing to do anything to get to his goal. However, he's incredibly smart, allowing himself to get what he wants the most efficient way, as seen with him creating a scenario where the entire world gave him what he wanted in order to get himself to the Dark Continent. Now, when it comes to his intelligence, we haven't seen his thought process, so it's hard to compare him to someone like Kurapika. And because we haven't seen his thought process, it is possible all the plans he's had wasn't his own. However, I find it highly unlikely someone else is the mastermind behind everything. Although if somebody else was responsible, I think it would have to be someone like Pariston. But I do think Beyond can be credited for his plan. And considering he manipulated the entire world, I would at least put his intelligence in the same realm of someone like Kurapika. We know that not only is he likely incredibly strong, but he has great confidence in his strength, even boasting it and using it to intimidate. He doesn't disregard human life, but he doesn't have any kind of heroic side to him. If they're not helping him push towards his goal, he has no use for them. Now, whether he'd protect those that are useful is unsure, but I'd say if they were genuinely useful, for example his crew, I think he'd protect them. But I do think if at any point he deemed them as useless or thought they were slowing him down, he'd no longer protect them, likely ignoring them, thinking if they die, they die. We also know that Beyond is likely the embodiment of what a hunter is supposed to be, with statements from Isaac, but also with the following of other hunters who believe the association needs to be reformed. Beyond is leading a new age of what's likely true hunters. Finally, I want to go over how his name is Beyond, because I don't think this name was chosen randomly or just because it's a cool name. I think it serves as a theme of going beyond. He wants to go beyond the limits of human exploration, push his limits beyond what he thinks he's capable of, possessing strength beyond anything anyone's ever seen. He's even thinking further or beyond everyone else. So many things about him revolve around him being beyond whatever something is. Although not too important, I think it's potentially a very cool theme. And there we have it. That's just about all there is to learn about Beyond Netero. And for fun, I will also be posting a video where I get into Beyond's Nen affinity and maybe even his Nen abilities. Because after all, Nen is deeply connected to one's personality, so it's not impossible to make an educated guess of what his Nen affinity could be. However, that along with figuring out his Nen ability is all pure speculation. But anyway, that's all we know about Beyond Netero. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. As always, feel free to compliment, comment, correct, complain, and argue in the comments.